You know, folks, I had somebody ask me at DeviantArt a question that I'm going to try to answer quickly here and try not to make this as long as my other videos, if you will, that I've done already today. Because I know, some people are probably going to be like, oh, how many videos is he making, and, well, this is a question I think anybody gets asked. When did you become a fan, or when did you gain interest, in something? And for me, a fan asked me, when did I get interested in this whole melting scenario that you see mostly sometimes in cartoons and in stories. And I've talked about it before, and I guess I don't know if they've seen those videos or if they've read it, but I guess to kind of update anybody, for me, I became a fan around 1985, 84, 85. I was about 5-6 years old, and TBS had the Tom and Jerry Super Show, Tom and Jerry Funhouse or something like that. And I remember watching it as a kid, and Tom and Jerry's Funhouse, or Super Funhouse, whatever it was called, had all different kinds of varieties of cartoons. We're not just talking Tom and Jerry. We're talking they had a variety of Tom and Jerry. They had Looney Tunes. They had everything. It was like it was a variety of different cartoons from different studios. And they would occasionally have Popeye cartoons on there. And I remember watching Popeye a lot as a kid, especially with the cartoons, and then you had the new CBS cartoon out and stuff, and it's like, back in the 80s, watching something like that, it was a cartoon, growing up in the 80s, if it grabbed your attention, it did its job. And Popeye cartoons did that for me. I don't remember, I do remember watching some of the Popeye, I think it was the Popeye and Son show, back in 87, 88 when it came out, and I actually liked it. I don't think it was, it wasn't anything special, but it was a Saturday morning cartoon, so I got a kick out of it. I enjoyed it. But with the TBS Funhouse, the Tom and Jerry Funhouse on WTBS, that's what it was known. That's what TBS was known as back then. WTBS. Again, like I said, they had a variety of cartoons, from Tom and Jerry cartoons primarily, well, not primarily, but at times, mixed in with Looney Tunes shorts, mixed in with other Hanna-Barbera character shorts, mixed in with Popeye, Betty Boop, you name it, Heckle and Jekyll, Baby Huey, stuff like that. Classic Casper, what have you. And basically it was a mixture of, here you had Tom and Jerry cartoons mixed in with Hanna-Barbera cartoons, like Yogi and Snagglepuss and Droop. Droopy was basically part of the Tom and Jerry lineup, but still you had like mixed in Hanna-Barbera cartoons like Yogi, Snagglepuss, Huckleberry, Quick Draw. You had that mixed in with Warner Brother cartoons like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Wile E. Coyote, and Roadrunner. You had that mixed in with Harvey tunes like Casper, Baby Huey, Little Lulu, I think that's what her name was. And of course you had it mixed in with some Max Fleischer cartoons like Betty Boop, and of course Popeye. And I remember one day watching it, and the Popeye short from 1956, I believe, called Parlez-vous Woos came out. And I had seen several Popeye shorts at the time. One of the Popeye shorts I liked even before then was called Beach Peach. And the reason I liked that is because, as a kid, anything fascinates you. And I like the fact that Olive, in Beach Peach, she goes under the water, and the next thing you see that just comes up is her hand going one, and then going back down, and then coming back up for two, and then going back down again, and then going back down up for three before completely really getting ready to go down. I remember that, and I got a kick out of it. I've always liked it. And, when I saw Paula Vu Wu's, I was, as a kid, these kind of things excite you, and they kind of make you a fan, even for life, like it's done to me. It makes you intrigued for these kind of concepts, even as you get older, like it has for me. And I remember when Paula Vu Wu's came out, that it really intrigued me, because there was a lot of things happening in there that normally you haven't seen in a Popeye cartoon happen that much. And most specifically, I remember the ending, because I used to pretend to do it and all that. I used to tell my mom and my aunts, and all that of what it was, and I was always pretend to do that as a kid. Basically, the ending is what stuck to me, because that's when Olive, and after she gets kissed by Popeye, who basically eats another can of spinach to turn into his version of what's known as the International. He ends up kissing her on the hand. She turns all red, steam comes out of her ears, and the next thing I know, she's melting into a pool of butter, and all you see is her face on the pool as it's flowing down the floor. And again, I got such a kick out of it that I pretended to do the melting thing myself as a kid, being 5, 6 years old. Anything will, and this is way before, we had mobile stuff, like mobile games and, internet, really, stuff like that. So, basically, long story short, that's how I became a fan of it, right then and there, because of the ending of Paula Vu Wu's. But then if that wasn't enough, I find out that a couple of years, almost a decade prior, and they showed this once again, just like with Paula Vu Wu's, I saw this on Tom and Jerry's Funhouse as well, on TBS. It was called Saruna Crooner. And I remember watching that, and that one scene where you had all the chickens just faint and just pass out of excitement of being sung to by this Frank Sinatra ex-Barria rooster, whatever you want to call him. And then you had this one black and brown hen, if you will, chicken, whatever you want to call her. She didn't faint. She literally melted into a puddle of goo. She basically into a rippling puddle of goo with a I guess what they call the mohawk, or the little frail thing, red gills, whatever they call them for chickens. Just remaining on top, and all she was beneath that red kind of mohawk or little red gills was nothing but a rippling puddle of goo. She had basically melted. And that made me more of a fan, because I'm like, oh wow, now Warner Brothers is doing it. I'm thinking, oh wow, Porky, Looney Tunes are doing it now. That's kind of cool. And unfortunately, I wouldn't really see anything like that until later on. Like, it didn't matter exactly, whether it was a happy moment or sad moment. Just to see a character do that was incredible. I mean, I saw a Martian goes to Georgia, a Martian over Georgia, whatever that Merry Melody short was, and I got a kick out of the female Martian melting into a puddle out of despair, not despair, but disappointment, sadness, if you will. I got a kick out of that. I really did. And again, I wouldn't know any more about this. I wouldn't see anything similar to this until Tiny Toons and Looney Tunes. Tiny Toons and Animaniacs. When Tiny Toons and Animaniacs happened, it was like, holy moly, they're actually going to do it. Because I saw them incorporated in the Looney Beginning, which was the pilot, and then when Europe in 30 Minutes came around, that really cemented, in my opinion, as far as Tiny Toons was concerned, that they had brought back what was known as the melting gag, or as some people would call it, the lustful melt gag, or whatever you want to look at, however you want to look at it. Because basically in Europe in 30 minutes you have Babs. I don't think it's out of luck, out of lust or anything, but basically out of admiration, see the royal couple, which was a parody of Prince Charles and Princess Diana. After she sees him, she literally melts into a pink puddle, but she doesn't flow down to the floor. No, the way she melts is all the pinkness basically flows up, and she just falls to the ground like that. And the pinkness, basically her melting goes in reverse a little bit, and it envelops her and just drops her down like that into a puddle. And I was, when I saw that happen with Babs in Tiny Toons, and I like the fact that what they did was they did something that even the classic cartoons wouldn't do. They actually had her remain that way while her friends, after she had melted, Buster, Hampton, and Plucky, ran right through her. And basically, as they're running right through her, the feet are basically, stomping, or basically running through her like a regular puddle, and she's just being, splashed. All little bits and pieces of a puddle form is just splashing here and there. And I liked that, I really did. And it's not the first time she did it. She also did it in the finale, which was Wonderful Tiny Toon Christmas, which was really cool. And that's after Buster gives her a kiss for a Christmas gift. And the only difference there is she melted through her clothes, and all that was left was her clothes, her eyes, and her ear ribbons. Well, in the first time she did it, she just was a complete pink puddle. This time she was not just a pink puddle underneath her clothes and eyes, but she had a little bit of white trimming around. And of course they did it with Plucky as well. Plucky did it in Acme Bowl, in Pluck Tracy. So it was interesting. It was really fun to see that one of the main gags that got people's attentions and made them laugh and become a fan of Tiny Toons and its characters was that melting gag, lustful melt gag, whatever you want to call it. And then they carry it over to Animaniacs, and the first character I see that does it is Dot in the 11-minute short Space Probe, after she sees her fantasies that projected onto her screen by the aliens, and when she sees this almost like muscular Mel Gibson-like character, her hugging this Mel Gibson-like muscular character as one of her fantasies, she literally melts into a white puddle. With all that's left is her ears and her flower remaining. And as soon as she becomes this white puddle, her ears just droop on top, and then the helmet that's reading her thoughts drops on top of her. And the aliens, I like this little addition, little ad that. Addition they put in it. They're aliens. They've never seen anything like this. They lift up the helmet like, what the heck just happened to her? Did we fry her? And suddenly she pops back to normal. But then the most notable one, in my opinion, was Minerva Mink. When Moon Over Minerva came out, and I saw what Wilfred Wolf did in his nerd form, and he melted, he was still able to talk. But something told me the first time I saw it that she's going to end up doing the same thing. She's going to end up melting as well after she goes crazy over his alter werewolf Fabio-like exterior or look. Something told me she's going to go crazy as well. She's going to melt as well, because she started to act all Tex Avery, crazy, wild takes and all that. And lo and behold, the second time she encounters Wilfred's werewolf Fabio alter ego, she ends up melting into a puddle. But what's different here is she ends up remaining as a puddle. She doesn't, she's not like when Wilfred did it, he could still talk. She's like a complete meltdown, and she just completely melts down into a creamy multi-puddle. Eyes are closed and everything. And Wilfred, in his werewolf form, has to pick her up like a wet towel, and pick her up and like a wet towel just wring her out to dry her and pop her back to normal. I mean, basically, he just picks her up like this, turns her over, turns her around in his hands, and just wrings her out like a towel, then does that, and basically pops her back into normal. And then the next time she does it, because she's the only character on Animaniacs that I know that did it twice, is meet Minerva when towards the end she ends up meeting her friend's cousin, her best friend's cousin, who she's supposed to take around town, and I guess on a tour or just a shopping spree or whatever. And she literally, again, goes into a zany wild outtake and literally runs into his arms and melts in his arms. But the way she does it is something that to me is a first. She's literally like in his arms, and all of a sudden she melts this way and this way. Basically, she splits in half as she melts in his arms, and just gathers herself into a puddle underneath his feet. A completely white puddle with just like her eyes closed and all that. But then she's able to pop. But unlike the first time in Moon over Minerva, in Meet Minerva, she's able to pop herself back up to normal in the form of a boat horn. So, to me, it's stuff like that that kept me intrigued and kept me a fan of the melting gag, of the lustful melt gag, or the melting gag, whatever you want to call it. Even to know that nowadays cartoons over the past several years have incorporated it a few times into their programming is really intriguing. And, you take a look at the Disney collaborated Captain Flamingo in the in the Blindsided episode or short, where Flamingo uses his voice alternator on his friend Otto to turn his voice into a suave, debonair-like voice, and while he has Otto kind of see exactly what it does by kind of getting a sample of it, if you will, of what this voice alterator does, and changing Otto's voice into a suave, debonair voice, it causes Flamingo's other best friend, Elizabeth, to melt into a puddle to where, after she's melted, her little pigtails are floating like this. Basically her puddle is spreading, and as it's spreading, her little pigtails go like this. They're like this, they go like this. And it's like, okay, so at least they keep it in there. They don't show how she reforms, but she obviously reforms off screen, but they don't show how it's done. They did a similar kind of thing in Sidekicked and News at 11 short with Vanna, but the thing is she doesn't melt completely. She just melts, as according to what they say, like I think TV Tropes put it, like wax. Literally she does. They had all sorts of situations. Disney's done it a few times with their Disney afternoon shows, like Quack Pack had Heavy Dental and Huey did it. It's it's all it's there, it's out there. Groove High had Tom dressed as create this alter ego called Dom that not even his friend Zoe recognizes, and as he compliments her, not only does she blush, but he compliments her enough to where she gasps a little bit, kind of like, this is kind of a traditional thing before a character melts, I guess, and she turns all of a sudden her body turns all watery and just splashes down as a puddle of water with her eyes closed, and then after about a few seconds she reforms herself. Heck, it even happened to the animated Lizzie McGuire in the Lizzie McGuire movie. The animated Lizzie McGuire ends up melting into a pink puddle made of hearts. So, again, it's out there, and again, what it does for someone like me is, it intrigues me to no end. It intrigues me to no end. It's just something that you get a kick out of, and you wonder, wow. You wonder, wow. I wonder, because it makes you question, and I apologize if this goes into two parts. It makes you question who came up with the idea in the first place. Who came up with the idea for this gag to come into existence? Because even while it's not a gag, it gets used sometimes as a special